Lord Bishop Nicholas Huff from Lord Jesus Christ Community Baptist Church. I, the I want to announce that the church has successfully implemented a new strategic new leadership model and formation of a dedicated transition team, marking a significant milestone in its expansion of the of the church with 3,845 members and 12,156 members in attendance with visitors. The church website will be updated with new board members and some current board members. This this transition establishes a robust operational structure capable of stewarding the church recently approved for $4 million budget managing the new and larger Pontiac, Michigan sanctuary and building. That's 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 planned to open in spring 2026. Uh, the tra- the transition team has successfully unified the church governance and operational arms, adopting a best practice model that that separate that separates strategic oversight from day-to-day management. The deployment of our new structure is complete and successful. The strategic and realignment assures that our ambiguous $4 million budget dedicated heavily to outreach steward with the highest level of transparency and accountability. We are focused financially sound and ready to meet growing needs of our communities. As bishop of the congregation, I have permanently established myself here in Michigan and I will stop like I say over and over again right now. I plan to stop moving around like I did in the past, like since 2015 when I used to live in when I first moved out of Chicago. I used to live in East Iowa. I was in East Iowa for about a year, and then I moved from East Iowa in late January of 27 of January 2017 to Detroit. Then I moved to Detroit for the first time by that time, and I stayed in Detroit until August 2017. Then I moved August 2017. Then I ended up moving to Cleveland. I was in Cleveland from late from August from I was in Cleveland late August 2017 to January to I think to mid January of 2018. Then moved back to Detroit from Cleveland in January 2018 to like I was living in Holland Park. I was living in Holland Park area actually in my own actually in an apartment in Holland Park area. Then I stayed in that apartment paying rent until up to October of 2018. Then moved to Philadelphia. Then I moved to Philadelphia. And I used to live in North. When I first moved to Philadelphia, I used to live in North Philadelphia. Then moved to the west side of Philadelphia until like from from like November of 2018 to December of 2019. And then when I, then after I moved out of Philadelphia, I moved to Pittsburgh. I moved to Pittsburgh for a while. Then I didn't want to be out there and like it out there, so I ended up moving to Louisville after in February 2020. Stayed out there stayed out for like a month, and then moved to Atlanta in late Jan in late Jan in late February of 2020. Then stayed out there. Then I lived in Atlanta from 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 late February to like I believe to like to May 2020. and then I moved back. Then I moved back to. Then I ended up moving back here to Detroit, in in May of 2020, and I moved out of Detroit again in December of in late December of 2020. Moved back to Atlanta, then moved back to Atlanta, and moved back to Atlanta. Then stayed in Atlanta in 2021. Moved from Atlanta, then moved out of Atlanta, moved and stayed living in Atlanta from January 2021 to like mid mid November of mid November of 2021, and I moved back. Then I ended up moving back to Louisville. Moved back to Louisville Louisville, Kentucky, in mid November 2021, and I was living like in the west. I was living in the West End area of Louisville. Um, then I moved in after I was staying. Then after I moved out of Louisville in 2020 in 2021 late December 2021 about New Year's Eve that I moved to that I ended up living in Chicago for like in the Inglewood area for like about two and a half months. Then left then left in 20 and that was in 22 that was like January 20 that was like January 2022 for like two and a half months, then left Chicago. That's where I was living in at that time. I was living in Inglewood at the time. I was on the south side of Chicago. Then I left Inglewood. Then I left Chicago. Moved out of Chicago again, and I'm moving back. I ended up moving back here to Detroit on the southwest side of Detroit. By southwest side of Detroit, I say like the southwest side of Detroit. Then moved. Then I pretty much. Then after that, then I left. After that, that's when I ended up back in. I ended up back living down south, in Atlanta, and then I lived in Atlanta. Then moved to Atlanta. Then moved to Atlanta. Then after I moved to Atlanta, then I stayed in Atlanta for a while. Then for a while down there. Then left. Then that's when I moved to Houston. I moved to Houston in April of 2023. Then 2023. That's when I was staying at places like the Star Hope Mission in that spiritual recovery program. Please that spiritual recovery program. And then I let from like May of from May 2023 to like October of 20 to October of to October. I say from I say I was there from like May of 2023 to like I was there until late late January of 2024 before I moved back to Philadelphia. Got to move back to Philadelphia. I was in Philadelphia like a real short, brief period of time in North Philadelphia. Just that I got to live there. Uh, then that's when I left Philadelphia and moved to New York. Moved back to New York. Moved to New York, and I was staying I was living in the Bronx. And after I was there in New York, it was too expensive to be there, so I had to leave. So I had to leave in New York. End up in then that's when I ended up in Baltimore. I ended up in Baltimore. I ended up living in Baltimore. Then I was in Baltimore I was in Baltimore. Then after I moved to Baltimore, I moved to North Carolina for a short period of time. Then I left North Carolina. Then and like I said, after I left North Carolina, that's how I ended up back here. That's I ended up back here. I ended up back here in Detroit. That's why right now I'm just going to establish myself here in Detroit, but I always when I always moved around in the past, I always ended up back here in Detroit. So I might as well just keep Detroit in my home right now, in my current city and hometown where I just go establish myself. Right, like I am here now, in the west part of Detroit, and does mostly church operations in up in Oakland County in Flint, up in Flint, because it was some point that the church used to have used to do operations in Atlanta, but we discontinued our operation in Atlanta in Georgia, and just kept everything in Michigan. But we don't have, well, if we did, we my at the time when my t- administrative team thought about the time like that, it's like it's best to keep everything in, like, at the time, in one state. So all we had to do when we file our annual reports every year, we don't have to worry about filing them in both in two states. We don't worry about doing it in one state, knowing it's Michigan. And the church at some point did file our corporation down in Texas, but Texas too. But we did I Texas too, but I Texas too. But like I said, we made just kept our operations in our operation in Michigan, in the state of Michigan, and still do operate that still do some outreach operation in Texas in the going forward, like by help doing stuff like helping. Though we usually do like help the homeless, the needy, and stuff like that. Can you keep operations there doing those type of things? And I want to say if a lot of people doesn't know, I just recently just lost my um mother just on November 18th of this year when she unexpectedly died. Um, I honestly believe that my mother died because my mother lost her life because of stress because she always, based on the conversations I had with her when I talked to her on the phone. A lot of times when I talked to her on the phone, when she talked to her on the phone like that, she was always in the room by herself when she talked on the phone, and she had to keep her conversation to a low and a minimum, so my stepfather wouldn't be listening to our conversation. Um, I believe her loss of life was caused of I believe her loss of life was caused of stress because I believe because every time when I talked to her, she always thought she always stressed out because of my stepfather, and he didn't do anything. He didn't really do anything. She talked about how she didn't do it. She pretty much he didn't do anything, and she didn't really do anything around the house. My mother, she mostly everything. All he did was sit in the family room and look at family room like as a lazy like he was lazy. So I think that he and my man when I and my mom and my I know I found out my mother, she was the one that used to do most of everything. But and she thought like for the last 10 years since her and my stepfather were married to each other like that, she was it's like 10 of those years she feel like she wasn't happy because happy was and my happy like that. And I believe that wherever that my that I told her, I know that everything. I know everything I told her. I always passed on to my biological father, on his father, on my side of the family when I talked to him. So he knows. I believe he knows the drill. I think he knows the drill. Know the drill. Really going on. I believe really going on. What going on too. With her too, and I think, and that's why my biological father told me a story that he told me about. But by the time when my mother and him was dating back years ago like that. He told me that story, and I'm starting to actually believe in that story. I started to believe that story months ago, because I believe my mom would be in a better situation. She would never if she had to have to deal with it. She had to deal with the pain, suffering, and with the pain and the worries she had to deal with. And I want to disclose in her own words what she has actually told him. That's why she actually told me over the phone when that them telling them under her phone call on the phone when I talked to her or visited her when we was just the two of us. That's why I say I'm happy that she's in a better place. She's in a better place with no worries and suffering and pain. I want to. That's why I want to tell. That's why this is. I say this. That's why I say it's a true story that I'm about to say. That was our actual own words in our conversation. Um, she I believe that my that's why I say again, that's why I believe my biological father was he told me a story about but he been telling me a story about my mom was dating back then when they was dating years ago, and before when they was dating up the time she got pregnant with me. I started to really believe this story because I believe she would be in a better situation today because when I seen her when I seen my mom in that funeral when I was looking at my mom in that funeral home before she got before they cremated her. I thought when they gonna cremate her like that, I couldn't really stand to look at her because I couldn't really stay and look at her because I was looking to the side. I couldn't really look at her because I hate to see my I ain't like to see my own mother in a situation laying there like that, and she wasn't walking and she was laying there like that. Uh, like as one of the deceased. Um, as one of the people one of the deceased like that. I couldn't stand and see her like that. That's why when I was looking at her, I couldn't really at the time. I really couldn't really look at her because I didn't want to see her like that. Like right now, it's like I can I can see her like that. That's why I'm disclosing you the actual words that she actually told me over our private phone calls. Um, I just want to say that when I talked to her when I talked to her um and I say and that's why I say I would rather that's why I say that's why I say one thing I can remember from her when my mom and she was so I believe she was really so like proud she was like so really so like proud of me because like she told me over her private phone call because she say I actually because I never had because she always told me over again I never had to move I would be on my own for so long I never had to I'll be like on my own for so long I never had to actually move back home I never had to move back home in the house like my sister did. My sister she had always she had to move always had to move back home because she either had man problems or either she flunked or in the past when she would go in school in Indiana she flunked out. She flunked out, lost her financial aid. She had to move back. She had to move back home. I never had to move back. I really never had to move back home like that. When I on my own or whatever situation I was in, I was able to survive on my own because I always because as a spiritual person, as a bishop and spiritual, I always had God on my side help me out in bad tough times and stuff like that, and stuff like that, and uh that's why I was lecturing about a guy when I met with in Baltimore about how he said I need to play how was telling me I need to plant myself and sell myself somewhere in a place like that so God can work through me God can work able to work through me and that's why I just have to that's why right now I'm selling myself here in Michigan so God can able to work through me going forward. And this time of grieving, and matter of fact, of grief of my mother being least deceased, and I deceased and everything. That's why I read, and I want to and that's why I'm because the guy was telling me and was talking to me and while I lived in Baltimore he was telling me how I need to sell myself so God can able to work through me. He said he was telling me too that God can't work through me if I able to work through me if I keep moving around. So from place to place, like I did in the past, like when I lived in Atlanta, all over the South, across the South, and places across the South or in the Northeast. So I like to keep myself planted here and get planted here in Michigan. So and start and then only time I would just only time I would just travel. Only time I would travel unless I'm traveling somewhere for the church and the congregation. To if I want for like any type of outreach or missions and and I want to say wherever, and I would say my sermon, and I think and I'm not gonna really say word for word what my mom actually told me in our private phone calls with her like that about what she said negatively about my stepfather about this and that like that. I pretty much disclosed all that information in my recent sermon that also posted. I also posted on social media. That's posted on social media and online about her actual word that she actually said about him. I believe I said negatively about him. That's why I did what I did. That's why I wanna that's why I believe I blame it on him. The reason why my mother is not here no more because I hate to see although her body was a physical body like that, but it's like what spiritual people know to this day like that. If a person's mother is now deceased, it's like their memory, or their memory, or their spirit, like it's around them. It's just around them daily. Could be around them daily, wherever they go. So that's why wherever they go, that's why I did that's why what I gonna do is I do the same thing I did with my grandmother on her side of the family. I did like a description with her photo along with what I did the same thing with my grandma on my biological father side of the family too when she died, and what I learned from her, what and describe what I learned from her and throughout my life from her like that with advice and guidance like that. I did the same thing with her. I did the same thing with my grandma on my mother's side of the family. Um, on side of the family, and I did the same. I did the same thing to her. Did the same thing to her too. So I can always and I frame them I frame them and keep them. I either frame them or I keep them somewhere in like a portfolio. So I can in a portfolio. Um, and I also did the same thing. And I know her birthday. My mom's birthday is December 1st. It's December 1st, so I did like a personalized like birthday card for her with a prayer attached to it, and that's found on social. That I posted that on social media as well. Um, um, and that's why and I know to this day based on what she told me what she wanted and putting that's why I say based on what she told me about how she was proud I believe told me in her private conversation how she was proud of me because I believe I was more like goal oriented than my compared to my sister because she like I said she flunked like I said she back when she was at junior college and she went to school in Indiana she flunked out and lost her financial aid. To this day I'm the only person compared to her that actually have like a long resume with my higher education background, um my what personal projects, volunteer work, helping deeply involved in the community and that was deeply involved in the community, helping the homeless and the needy. Um, and I did, and I had a lot. I got, and you got my religious and social service nonprofit background, child social background. Um, and I know to this day, I know based on her memory, she probably want me. My mom probably want me to actually continue to move on. That's why she did what she did, move on, move with right now um because one thing I learned she always told me she want me to be more she want me to be she or want me to do it be more. That's why she really didn't want to call people like me. She didn't call me as much because she wanted me to be independent, talk me but she know I was fine and she know I mostly fine. She know I want and she wanted me as type of to actually be more grown up and live out and while I was living out person be out as an independent, live out of state, live out while I was living out of state. Uh, so I read, so I read, so I Um, so that's mostly what I wanted to say. Want to say too is that I want to give you an update about my congregation here in Michigan. Um, how everything is coming along successfully. The new church sanctuary and building plan to open up in Oakland County area in spring 2026. The church have recently approved a $4 million budget. Um, the church is successfully putting this new under this new leadership transition team. The church is putting together. It's pretty much come together successfully with that, appointing new motivated and committed board members and staff, and so everything can run more smoothly and in up there in that county around like Pontiac, Bloomfield Hills, and Flint. Thank you.